Hello, viewers. Welcome to another episode of KYT. Today, we are going to talk about NEP, that is National Education Policy 2020, which has been recently declared by the central government of India. We all are very inquisitive and curious to know about its impact, about its advantages, especially the parents and the children who are very curious to know that how it is going to impact their future career paths. And for that, we have invited an expert who will talk about the overall holistic development this policy will have on our society. And she is none other than Mrs. Revati Srinivasan. She is the director and the principal of one of the most reputed institutions of, I would say, India, that is Sulochana Devi Singhania High School. First of all, we welcome you, ma'am, in KYT.
Sure.
It is an honor to
Thank
have
you.
you today, and we are very curious to know about your views about NEP. So, first of all, I would like to ask you, in the NEP, we see a change in the curricular structure, that is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So, how do you see at this structure? What are the advantages?
Thank you very much, Nikhil, for inviting me. And I look at the NEP as a very, very progressive policy. Yes, a lot of it will depend on how we are going to be implementing it and how are we going to be taking that forward, because and taking stock of education at every level. So, but yet, if I see the policy, I think it is very, very, very progressive and may give a lot of returns, positive returns in a few years from now. But however, everything does not get implemented in a particular year. It is going to be spaced out. Having said that, I would say that one of the reasons for moving the system from a 10 plus 2 plus 3 to the current system of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 is basically for the universalization of education. Everybody wants children to get back to school at every point of time and wherever they are, whether it's rural setup or whether it's an urban setup. So a GER of 100% is expected within a short span of 5 years. That's the first parameter. But the overall way of my looking at it as an education is for the first time, we are regularizing early childhood education. Otherwise, early childhood education, kindergartens, have just been an unregulated sector. So you will have small schools being set up, kindergarten centers being set up in every flat. So that's not going to be there now. Now it needs a complete, there will be a regulatory body that will actually oversee its curriculum, its activities, and the kind of emphasis that they are going to lay. When I see the other aspects of it, be it the preparatory stage, which is the kindergarten, the foundational stage, which is primary and the early elementary school, and then I'm looking at the middle school, which is from grades 6 to 8, and then the higher secondary school. I see that there is a purpose and objective given for each of the stages. For example, in the very, very early childhood stage, they are looking at getting children the fun of learning, satiating their curiosity. Are the children wanting to ask why, and can the teachers just give answers to them? So that's what it is. It's not about a content that we go across to children. It's not necessary for children to know all the names of fruits and vegetables all around. I would like to say personally that we must over here personalize education. For example, a child who is living in perhaps in a place so which is very remotely connected, but is an agricultural land, should know what are the kind of fruits and vegetables available in their town or in their village. And everybody else learns accordingly. There need not be a standard curriculum at all for this. But it's the stage for experimentation. Children can sort of experiment with a variety of play activities such that learning happens. You can teach concepts without telling them what the concept is all about. Okay, you can teach them to reason. That's very important because all of this is going to help in the middle school. So that's how they are looking at it. I also think that apart from developing curiosity, children will learn to be in a group, play as a team together, work in a very collaborative manner. And also that they learn basic etiquettes. So schools will start teaching them at the elementary stage, that is on the preparatory stage till grade 2. How do you eat? How do you prepare yourself? Or how do you dress up? How do you do for an occasion? How do you behave? How do you talk to someone? Okay, someone older than you, how do you talk? How do you talk to someone who is your age? And how do you talk to someone who is younger than you? So these are basic etiquettes which sometimes goes amiss. So I think emphasis is being laid on that. In the later stage, in the foundational stage, again, they're concentrating on the play activity method, but at the same time, they are allowing the children to have activities leading to conceptual understanding. So I think that's again a very nice stage. That is the stages from standard 3 to standard 5. And in the middle school, as I see, they are actually concentrating on learning the basic concepts in maths, in science, in languages. So they actually start understanding that and building the basic foundational level. And then in the secondary stage, children choose their subjects. So students have got the power to choose. They will be able to develop strong skills of critical thinking, of reasoning, of communication, all of that. But we must remember that that's being developed right from the foundational stage, right from the preparatory stage. So when it comes forward like this, I think they start thinking differently, and it really helps. And I have personally experimented with this, and I've been experimenting with this for the past many years now, almost a decade. And I know it pays dividends. We don't know whether what we are doing right now is helpful for the children. But when I see these children come out of school and they get to college, the power of resilience they have, the power to think critically, evaluate something that's in front of them, to be able to debate and take a stand for themselves is amazing. So I think it really will help.
Ma'am, as you were speaking about local and hyper-local concepts, like you were stressing, emphasizing more on learning local concepts. So, learning in your mother tongue, in your own language till grade 5, how do you look at this? Even NEP states that.
Yes. See, NEP does not state only learn in your mother tongue. Let's understand that it talks about three language formula. Okay, that's one is their own mother tongue, two is a regional language, and three is English or whatever it is. Now, apart from this, they're also developing interest for children in classical languages like Sanskrit, Prakriti, and languages like that, the ancient languages. Now, the whole idea is language development. For me, and this is my personal view, I really don't know how they would have conceived it. But to me, there are two ways of looking at this. One, looking at it from the point of view of how learning will help if it is done in mother tongue. And definitely so, it's in the positive because child is familiar with the mother tongue. Because of that, his self-esteem is good. He knows that anything that's there in his mother tongue, he understands, he digests, he does everything. So he's able to interpret it as well. Okay. But my second part of it would say that forcing children to be learning only their mother tongue in a place which may be cosmopolitan, which may be a metro city, or even a town where children may have traveled from one place to another. There are today so many migrants. So we all move from one state to another. So it should not cause a problem for that particular child when he's moving from one town to the other. There are people like in the armed forces who are on a transferable job. So nothing should be forced. This is my view, that open across all avenues of learning languages. For me, language is a very important way of communication. So it doesn't matter which language it is, but let them speak the languages correctly without mixing it and anglicizing the language. I think if we do that itself, we have developed the right way of speaking. And when English is important today because it's a global language. When children are traveling and they have become global citizens, it is so essential that children have good communication skills. Our students also go abroad to study. So at that point of time, there should not be a kind of poor self-esteem as to whether I'm speaking the right way or not. So for that reason, it is important. So learning a language, yes, is good. Having a three-language formula is good, but nothing can be forced on students. I feel that you should give them a choice. But at the same time, let's also understand a practical problem from the point of view of schools I'm talking. If you have a mother tongue of a child, the class will have so many children with different mother tongues. How is the teacher going to communicate? So there is just one common language that links all of them together. So for that reason, you don't stop a child from speaking a particular language, but encourage them to have a common language so that they are connected with each other. You cannot have them divisive in a classroom. That's very difficult for a school to run that particular class.
Ma'am, NEP talks about also a very interesting concept. Like I found this very interesting that they will be allowing children, or rather they'll be encouraging children to try some informal internship. So what is your take on this? Something very different.
I love it. Let me tell you that I've always believed that children must get hands-on experience working on it. So about 7-8 years back, I tried it with my students of grade 11 and 12, and it worked brilliantly. So I'd given them for a choice of someone whom they would like to tag or shadow, and they chose certain professions. And what really comes out of such a internship is a fact that children get to learn life skills. There are things that they believe is beautiful and very glamorous. When they get onto the field, they realize it is not half as glamorous that it is. Okay, be it the media world, be it the cine world or the fashion design world, any of these, I'm sure that all my students would have thought that that's actually quite simple and easy, and it isn't. It is so much of hard work, and even when the model goes on the stage, they are still working backside. So they don't get to see anything. Similarly, children who wanted to become doctors, when they went to hospitals to try out, just shadowing and being there, the sights that they saw actually disturbed them. And many of those children are doctors' children themselves, yet it disturbed them. So you can imagine for a child who's not exposed to all of this, how it can be. So to me, this is very, very important in grade 11 and 12. Before they make a career choice, going for an internship helps. But coming back to the NEP, NEP talks about internship in vocational courses, even at a much younger level. So there it is talking about gardening. It talks about maybe stitching. It talks about cooking. It talks about maybe wellness. It talks about, health. So these are small things, carpentry, electricals. And I think that's a wonderful concept. The reason being that we must teach our children life skills. We are all living in a world which is now very, very good to us. Okay, I would say we are a very, very the golden people, I can call us, because we're very advantaged community. If I can say, we have help at home. When our children grow up, they may not be having all this kind of thing. Labor will become too expensive, and they may not be able to hire it. Okay, so I would say if we teach all of these skills in school, children will learn to fix a bulb when it goes wrong. Children will learn to repair a pipe when they didn't have to call a plumber, right? They will know to sew their buttons if they need to do so. They can cook a nice meal and not just depend on people who are supplying at home. Not at all. They can eat the kind of food that they want if they develop an interest in cooking. If nothing, whether you are growing a kitchen garden or not, I think it's very important to do gardening because it's education of the soul. You feel very good within. So when you are very, very stressed, doing a vocation that you really like will help children to sort of be de-stressed. And I think that's a wonderful way. Apart from that, they will also learn to respect the value of labor. And they will learn to respect people who are doing that kind of work. Did we not learn things in the last 6 months? We kept our own, dustbins outside the house. Okay, we carried everything ourselves. We cleaned up the whole place. We cleaned our toilets. We cleaned everything. Okay, and that's part of life. One has to learn it and not feel shy about it. Not feel that it's demeaning. So for me, I think it teaches children the real values of life. And like Gandhiji says, it's of the education is of the mind, body, and soul. That's exactly what comes across. So I think it's a wonderful concept, and I think 10 days of bagless days where they go for an intern, I think it's wonderful. Let's look at it from the adult point of view. If students walk into a carpentry room and the carpenters are working and the boys volunteer, girls volunteer to help, how good the carpenter will be. He becomes the guru there. Okay? All the time he's been seen as a carpenter. For the next 10 days, he's going to be seen as a guru. And his self-esteem is going to be so high that he's going to be more willing to contribute to teaching children better things. So I think that's the way we have to look. On the whole, the society will become more an equitable society.
Ma'am, many are curious also to know that will this new NEP policy would increase the syllabus, will increase the curriculum as such?
No. Contrary to that, let me tell you that the concentration is less on content and more on experiences. So the concentration is more on learning and less on repeating the content that you have learned. So that is the reason why they are not going to be concentrating so much on the board examinations. So the focus will move to learning. It's exactly like what Finland and many of the European countries have, where the stress is on learning. So that is why, have they got the right critical skills? Have they got the right thinking skills? Are they able to do things very creatively? Are they able to problem solve creatively? So these are the questions that they are asking. So it's all about aptitude, it's about competencies, and it's about skill building. So it's not going to be content. So to me, it's going to be lesser content.
Ma'am, as we're talking about the exams right now, so they are thinking of conducting the exams like in the grade 3, grade 5th, and then grade 8. So this new exam structure, like what is your take on this? Like how do you see at this structure?
This 3, 5, and 8 is a kind of system that's always there in many of the European countries again. And I'm drawing that because, but there, they always have a single board for the entire country. In our country, we cannot have a single board. You know, we may have 36 to 38 boards in the country. So bringing all of them together to write an examination, I do think it's going to be a very feasible idea. This is my frank opinion. Yes, you can tell them that you can tell that you are developing skills. You're going to be testing them on competencies. You're going to be testing them on their aptitudes. All of that, one can think and design papers like that. However, let's understand the levels of understanding and the level of education over the past 60, 70 years has just been different for different schools and for different boards and for different places. So we have a divide, rural-urban divide. We have within the rural area has nothing to do with learning, and I'm one strong believer that there is no impact of better learning because you come from a more learned family, not at all. Yet our differences are so much that it should not happen that when you're setting your paper for standard 3, 5, and 8 and you're testing their competencies, it is too easy for the urban children, for the metro children. Then in that case, that the purpose what you're trying to do is not going to get served. So for example, if I were to see how a purpose of having these kind of examinations, these are more formative in nature. Okay, though it may sound as if it's summative, but 3, 5, and 8 classes, they would have learned certain skills. We are trying to test them on that and trying to see, especially with mathematical skills and language skills. So you will see there is a great advantage that urban children have vis-a-vis the rural children. So again, it should not lead to a divide. So one has to be very careful in kind of setting of the papers, because it's a case of no one shoe will fit all. That's for sure.
And ma'am, lastly, I would like to ask you, like, even the assessment of board exams would be very different. Like they are mentioning it as parak in the NEP policy. So how is this assessment going to be?
We really, as of now, there's not much of clarity whether we have 10 standard or not. But when I see the examinations, that the way they are talking in terms of assessments, they are coming across with this parak, which will help and give guidelines for the examinations. But where I agree with them is about the formative assessments. So formative assessments are examinations that are just held within the classroom setup, not at the end of the year, and not like a big board exam. Now, the purpose of this would be self-evaluation. The child himself is able to assess where he is going wrong, which is a very, very good feature. The other way of looking at it is that the student really becomes aware of his own thinking and what he can do, and sort of indirectly, directly encourages student growth and encourages students to take more interest in their own learning. So the onus of learning falls on the student vis-a-vis the parent or the teacher. So I think to that extent, it's really going to be very useful. The second, I think there has been in the past few years and many, many years now, over stress on the marks. 90% is not enough. We've come to that point where you say, how much did you get? I got only 90, ma'am. Then you feel miserable that you say 90. Perhaps 30, 35 years back, if you said, what did you get? And you say you got a first class, and you say, wow, you got a first class. Okay. Today, if you look at a student and they say that they've got a first class, you look down at them. So that's the way we have come. So, marks will have no value. One is that I don't know what the assessment patterns are. I'm not wanting to comment on that. But at the same time, I think if students get this feeling that only if you get 90 plus, you have achieved something in your board exams, that's a sad thing. Because let's understand that children must have the right kind of skills in order to be successful in life. It is not only academic scores that's going to get them anywhere. They must have the power of resilience to be able to stand up to every challenge that they have. So moving away from board exams and heavy reliance on the marks of the board exams, I'm agreeable to that, because I think time has come that the bubble has to burst. And, that marks and marks orientation for every little thing has to move out. I also think that there is another kind of assessment that we can think about is a normative assessments. And normative assessment normally takes place in a class where the test is conducted in order to find out whether the child has got any special needs, okay, or the child needs any special attention. So that helps the teacher to keep the child in the class completely inclusive, yet be able to provide additional support to the child. So then the child is not left out. We don't have to call them as a learning disabled child or LD or autistic or anything of that kind. It becomes an all-inclusive school. Every school becomes an inclusive school, just that your assessment will help in identifying where the difficulty is, and then being able to bring in the right experts to be supporting those children. So I think that way, this would be really good. And you need to really test them only in grade 12, because that's when they're really going out. So I think that way it is going to be good. But at the same time, I am not in favor of not having exams, because we have grown with that mindset that exams is what it is. An element of anxiety is important to succeed in life. And that element of anxiety, I'm talking in terms of positive anxiety, positive stress that goads you, pushes you to perform. Okay. And I think children must have that. Why? Even adults must have that. We won't. Otherwise, we become so complicit. Yeah. So I think that's so important for us. So that little bit of competition, I must tell you, parents, that don't worry about that competition as long as that it's not cutthroat. And let me tell you, among students, it's never cutthroat. When adults enter the scene, we make it cutthroat. तुमको कितना मिला? उसको कितना मिला? उसको 3 mark कैसे अधिक मिला? You know, that question is what's going to make it cutthroat. So don't add the stress levels. So don't worry of whether there are going to be exams or no exams. The concentration should be on learning and learning the right kind of skills, understanding the subject, applying knowledge. And that's going to be another way of testing for the board exams. It's going to be less of content, but more of application and analysis of the information that they have or of learning that they have. And I think that if that comes in, it would be wonderful. And the best time, I would say, parents, is now. When you are doing all your examinations and everything online, you are looking at ways and means by which you can make your tests so interesting. We've been conducting tests, and I can share something with you. We did videos, we showed them a movie, and there was questions based on that. There's an audio clipping. You listen to the audio. In the confines of your home, you're answering. There are no right or wrong answers, but there are more appropriate answers and less appropriate answers. So that's how you will know whether you get more or less. So that's what I would like to tell parents, that please keep only the core essentials. And the core essentials are knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge to a particular situation. 2 is a right kind of attitudes and aptitude and developing aptitude for learning. 3 would be the right kind of skills that you must know at every stage. And all the skills are applicable right from the youngest child when he is 3 years. And it's just that it is graded differently. As they grow older, you must be better at your skill. That's it. You know, then you are having a child for life. A child who's able to take care of himself during the worst of the challenge that may come across with a smile. That's what we want in our children. We want them to stand up for themselves. We want them to be able to express themselves. And I think ultimately find peace within themselves. You know, that's the purpose of life, that you are happy and you spread happiness around.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Indeed, you shared a lot of valuable inputs about NEP. And what we have inferred from this interview is like NEP, it's very new, very interesting. It is going to be very challenging for the children as far as learning new concepts is concerned. Like it will be an interesting journey overall. And I'm sure students will enjoy the journey of new NEP when it will be actually implemented and executed in each and every school. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again for sharing your all inputs on KYT. Viewers, if you have liked this show, then please like, share, and subscribe the channel. Till then, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.